She was friends with Bill Clinton and George Bush, two close alleged associates of Jeffrey Epstein. That one sentence, that's where this story starts.
It was given to her in Langley. The only reason why you have that many wrist buttons if you're looking at clothes on somebody.
A joke maybe, or maybe the most honest thing said about Ellen DeGeneres in years.
Her stories have changed so many times about what happens, when it happens, how it happens, with different versions. And each time she speaks, there's a different version.
Three voices, three different angles, all pointing at the same name. Ellen DeGeneres built a television empire on the phrase, be kind. But right now, with the Epstein files dropping, Ghislaine Maxwell sitting in a Texas prison with meals delivered to her cell, and Joe Rogan saying what the mainstream press won't. People are asking a question that refuses to go away. What exactly did Ellen know, and why did she run? To understand why any of this matters, you have to go back to what Ellen was. For over 2 decades, she was one of the most powerful figures in American entertainment. Not just a talk show host, a brand, a symbol, a woman who survived coming out in the 90s, rebuilt her career from scratch, and became the face of mainstream warmth. Be kind to one another. That was her closing line. Every single episode.
I found out that Ellen was mean, and all these people came out and said, Ellen actually, she lost everything. She fell apart, disappeared, because people found out that this character that she was portraying in half an hour on a television show is not really who she was.
That collapse started publicly in 2020 when former staff began speaking out about a toxic workplace. But by then, something else was already building quietly in the background, something that had nothing to do with being mean to interns. Because around the same time Ellen's show imploded, Ghislaine Maxwell was being arrested. July 2nd, 2020, FBI agents move on a property in New Hampshire. Maxwell, who had spent months in hiding after Jeffrey Epstein's death in 2019, is taken into custody. Prosecutors charge her with recruiting and grooming young girls for Epstein, and in some cases participating directly. The trial that followed would shake Hollywood to its core, and the question people kept coming back to wasn't just who is Ghislaine Maxwell, it was who was she working with. Here's what the court documents actually show. Maxwell was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. But what came out during the legal process was arguably more disturbing than the conviction itself. According to newly filed court documents, Maxwell claimed that 25 individuals described as friends and associates of Epstein had been protected under secret settlements, deals that were never disclosed to her during her own trial.
Ghislaine Maxwell, the former associate of Jeffrey Epstein, she was convicted of trafficking minors, sentenced to 20 years in prison. She claims that 25 men, maybe friends, associates of the deceased financier, have been protected under secret settlements, secret deals, and that this information was not revealed to her during her trial. This is on top of what she claims are 4 other individuals, alleged co-conspirators, who were never charged.
25 names protected by deals nobody's seen for co-conspirators who walked free. Critics of Ellen have pointed to this as the key context for everything that follows, because shortly after Maxwell's legal proceedings began gathering momentum, Ellen shut down her show quietly, suddenly, and eventually permanently. Now, is that a coincidence? Her team said it was time. She said she'd been feeling constrained by the format for years, but the timing is what people cannot let go of. And then there's what Maxwell allegedly said when her deposition touched on Ellen directly.
Her stories have changed so many times about what happens, when it happens, how it happens, with different versions. And each time she speaks, there's a different version.
That clip has been interpreted in wildly different ways. Some say it's Maxwell deflecting. Others say it's Maxwell doing exactly what she's done throughout protecting someone. Because one thing Ghislaine Maxwell has never done, even with 20 years hanging over her head, is names.
I do not believe he died by suicide, no.
And do you believe that, do you have any speculation or view of who killed him?
No, I don't.
She knows and she's not talking. The question is why and who benefits from her silence. To understand the scale of Epstein's network, you have to understand what the Black Book actually was. This wasn't rumor. This was a physical contact list recovered, documented, and eventually obtained by the FBI. Through a sting operation, Epstein's former butler, Alfredo Rodriguez, had secretly kept a copy after working inside the Palm Beach mansion long enough to know something deeply wrong was happening.
Alfredo Rodriguez was very nervous for the first part of the deposition. You could tell he had more information than he was giving. He talked about the Black Book. He talked about being fired and obtained some documents that had some of the names of some of the young girls that were coming over to the house.
Rodriguez later tried to sell the book for $50,000. Instead, he sold it to an undercover FBI agent and was arrested on the spot.
The Hilton Hotel at the corner of Glades Road in Boca. I'm in room 118.
Obstruction of justice, sentenced to 18 months. And then in 2015, Rodriguez died at the age of 60. The FBI had the book. The names were inside.
The amount of famous names that were in that. Mick Jagger, Courtney Love, Prince Andrew, Fergie, just people from all over the world. President Clinton, President Trump. He wasn't president at the time, but Donald Trump was in there. And just so many famous people were in there.
Now, important caveat, and the documentary footage itself makes this clear inclusion. In that book is not evidence of wrongdoing. These were contact lists. People show up in powerful people's phones for 1,000 reasons. But here's what Rogan and others have zeroed in on. It's not just who was in the book, it's who was circled. Someone went through those pages and marked specific names as more deeply involved. And the person who did that, marking the one who could explain what it meant, is no longer alive. This is where Joe Rogan enters the conversation and where the internet went into overdrive. Rogan has never been subtle about his skepticism of Hollywood's elite circles, but his commentary on Ellen specifically hit differently because he wasn't just making jokes. He was connecting dots in his own chaotic stream of consciousness, wave that a lot of people had already been quietly connecting on their own.
The only guy that saw Stephen Paddock alive, his name is Jesus Campos. He was a guard at Mandalay Bay. He got interviewed nowhere else. You know where he got interviewed in the beginning? Ellen.
Really?
Now, Rogan and his guest framed this as strange, as worth questioning. They're not stating it as fact, and neither are we. But the observation itself has fueled significant online debate. Why would the sole eyewitness to one of the deadliest mass shootings in American history give his first interview, not to a news network, but to a daytime talk show? People noticed. And once people started noticing, they started looking at everything else differently. Again, this is Rogan riffing. Jokes wrapped around something uncomfortable, but the CIA asset theory, as wild as it sounds, actually has a specific origin point that goes beyond comedy podcasts. It connects to documented conversations about how Epstein's network allegedly functioned. The idea that powerful figures weren't just participants. Some were facilitators, connectors, people who could put the right names in the same room. And what was Ellen if not someone who put powerful people in rooms? This is the part that critics of Ellen keep coming back to. Not her friendships, not her connections, her behavior on camera. Because there's a pattern in those clips that once you see it is hard to unsee. Ellen had power, real power, the kind that made celebrities, politicians, and public figures sit in that chair and answer questions they clearly didn't want to answer. And some researchers into Epstein's network have pointed out that this mirrors a documented pattern. Powerful people being quietly assessed for vulnerabilities. What do they react to? What makes them flinch? What do they desperately not want public? Mariah visibly uncomfortable. Years later, Mariah revealed she had suffered a miscarriage not long after that appearance. What was played as a light moment, forcing a woman to either lie or confirm a pregnancy on live television, was, in hindsight, one of the most invasive things ever broadcast on daytime TV. Martha Stewart, Katy Perry, guest after guest pushed past their comfort zones, information extracted, vulnerabilities exposed. Online communities that have spent years analyzing Epstein's operation call this social mapping, identifying pressure points, and they've pointed to Ellen's interview style as a potential example of this in plain sight. Is that a reach? Maybe. Rogan thinks it's worth asking. A lot of people think it's worth asking. While the theories swirl online, there is a documented, verified, heartbreaking story underneath all of it. Virginia was just 16 years old when she was recruited by Ghislaine Maxwell. She'd been working as a locker room attendant at Mar-a-Lago.
She approached you to
Yeah, she's like, oh, do you need to make any extra money? I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, maybe like $200 with this older guy in Palm Beach. He gets a lot of massages from girls,
Virginia would go on to become the most prominent public face of Epstein survivors. She testified. She wrote a memoir. She named names, including Prince Andrew, who settled her civil lawsuit in 2022 for an undisclosed amount. And then in April of 2025, just weeks before the first major release of the Epstein files, Virginia Giuffre died. In the weeks before her death, she had been struck by a vehicle in a hit and run. The driver was never found. She survived that incident, but not long after her family announced she had died by suicide. What makes this devastating beyond words is what Virginia had posted publicly before her death. Too many evil people want to see me quieted.
Virginia Giuffre, the most prominent victim of the late convicted Well, Jeffrey Epstein took her own life on Thursday. This is just weeks after she made headlines for saying that she had days to live after she claimed to have been hit by a bus.
This is the weight underneath everything Rogan is reacting to. Underneath the memes, the theories, the podcast clips. A real woman, a real warning, and a timeline that doesn't sit right with a lot of people. When Donald Trump won the 2024 election, one of his loudest campaign promises was releasing the Epstein files. Full disclosure, all of it. And around the same time that promise became real, Ellen DeGeneres and her wife Portia Desai left the United States. 14. Ellen has been a vocal Trump critic for years. That's documented. A political exit is a reasonable explanation, but critics are pointing out the specific timing. Not after the election was called, not after the inauguration, right as the machinery around the files started moving, right as Maxwell's legal team started making noise about those 25 protected names.
About that cow. But anyway, good riddance to her. But, she was quite friendly with that P. Diddy bloke, wasn't she?
Well, this is why I say release the Diddy files.
Yeah.
Release the Diddy files. Come on, Donald Trump. We want to know whose name.
And that's the thing about the Diddy parallel that Rogan's audience keeps raising. Diddy's case, for all the noise it generated, ended up being prosecuted on a remarkably narrow set of charges, given what was publicly alleged. The pattern people keep identifying is this. When the net gets close, it seems to close on the most visible, most expendable figure, and stop. The people behind the people stay behind the curtain. Ghislaine Maxwell is currently serving 20 years in a federal prison camp in Bryan, Texas. Except serving time might be generous language. Fellow inmates have allegedly been warned directly. This is the architecture of the silence. Maxwell is sitting comfortably. The files are releasing slowly. The names are still protected. And the people with the most to lose are putting oceans between themselves and the country where the reckoning is supposed to happen. Joe Rogan didn't produce a legal brief. He didn't subpoena documents. He sat across from a guest, talked through what the public record shows, what the Epstein files suggest, and what the timeline looks like, and said out loud what a lot of people had been thinking quietly. Ellen DeGeneres was connected socially, professionally, and potentially in ways still being uncovered to a world that is only now being fully exposed. Is she guilty of what the darkest corners of the internet allege? That's not what this video is. That's not what Rogan claimed either. What he claimed, what the documents, the depositions, the prison consultants, and the dead woman's tweet all point toward is that the full story has not been told, that powerful people made deals, that silence was purchased, and that the people who knew the most have been the most protected. Maxwell won't talk. The files are still being processed. Millions of pages manually searched, surfacing shocking images and results that have nothing to do with what you searched for. The Truth Commission in New Mexico is still building its team, and Ellen DeGeneres is in rural England. More files are coming. More names will surface. And if Ghislaine Maxwell ever decides that her comfort inside that Texas prison camp is no longer worth the price of her silence, everything changes overnight. The question isn't whether the story is over. It isn't. The question is when the next name drops. Will you be surprised? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe. Turn on notifications, because the moment something breaks will be.